the lion and the lamb. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. Oh, we'll see how great is our God. Gadol Elohai, Shiruki Gadol Elohai, Kol Echad Yirei, Gadol Elohai. Name above all names, worthy of praise. My heart will sing, how great is our God. Name above all names, praise. My heart will sing, how great is our God. Shem Melchoshem, Mibi Ashir, Kigadol Elohai. Name above all names, worthy of praise. My heart will sing, how great is our God. I will give thanks to thee, O Yah, among the people. I will sing praises to thee among the nations. For thy steadfast love is great to the heavens, and thy faithfulness to the clouds. Be exalted, O Yah, above the heavens. Let thy glory over all the earth. Be exalted, O Yah, above the heavens. Let thy glory, let thy glory, let thy glory be over all the earth. I will give thanks to thee, O Yah, among the people. I will sing praises to thee among the nations. For thy steadfast love is great to the heavens, let thy glory, let thy glory be over all the earth. Be exalted, O Yah, above the heavens. Let thy glory be over all the earth. Be exalted, O Yah, above the heavens. Let thy glory, let thy glory, let thy glory be over all the earth. Hallelujah. Only by grace. I believe tonight we're thinking about the Passover lamb. Yahusha. Without Yahusha, none of us would be here. Only by grace can we enter. Only by grace can we stand. Not by our human endeavor, but by the blood of the Lamb. Into your presence you call us, you call us to come. Into your presence you draw us, and now by your grace we come. Now by your grace we come. Only by his grace. Only by grace can we enter. Only by grace can we stand. Not by our human endeavor, but by the blood of the Lamb. Into your presence you call us, you call us to come. Into your presence you draw us, and now by your grace we come. Now by your grace we come. Your human transgressions, who was that? Thanks to your your grace we are cleansed by the blood of the Lamb. If you marked our transgressions, who would stand? Thanks to your grace, we are cleansed by the blood of the Lamb. But it's only by grace can we enter. It's only by grace that we stand. It's not by our human endeavor, but by the blood of the Lamb. Into your presence you call us, you call us to come. Into your presence you draw us, and now by your grace we come. And now by your grace we come. Oh, yeah, you marked our transgressions, who would stand? But thanks to your grace, we are cleansed by the blood of the Lamb. Yeah, if you marked our transgressions, who would stand? Thanks to your grace, we are cleansed by the blood of the Lamb. Only by grace can we enter. Only by grace can we stand. Not by our human endeavor, but by the blood of the Lamb. Into your presence you call us, you call us to come. Into your presence you draw us, and now by your grace we come. And now by your grace we come. And now by your grace we come.
I will sing more. It was lovely. Thank you. Check, 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 check. Check,
Okay.
check, check, check.
You know, it's just a beautiful, relaxed time. Let me tell you all the things that have been going on since this week, just to get to this point. Pastor Michael, when we arrived, said, Jess,
check,
you won't believe outside a construction site has started.
Okay,
Why
let's
do they
see.
start a construction site The days that we arrive, spiritually, we understand
Check.
why.
That's good.
And there's been so many different things. People's health. Stephanie, she was violently sick for days coming up here. And then they had a 4-hour journey where they had to stand, from Lisbon on the train to come back. But it's because there is something in the spirit and the ruach that is being fermented, that is happening. And Stephen, we are just so excited to have you here today. Excited is not in the fleshly terms. We've hungered for this. Everyone has paid a price to get here internationally. They have had to seek hotels to get here. They've had to travel here, learn a new culture, learn so many different things just to get to this point. And we all have stories to tell because it was important to us. It was important for this nation, even this small little locality, this beautiful church where Pastor Michael, I personally, with my late husband, have known him for 40 years. And it's just so wonderful that we can come back together here and do this, And Stephen, thank you. We want to honor you for, again, 4th year running, coming to a different nation. Wherever I traipse you across, you come. And you're just wonderful because your heart is the same, to build Yisrael, to show them what that means, for them to have an understanding of the feast that we hardly had any knowledge of for many of us. Even for we eating with honey and locusts, we quickly turned around in the last 5 years. And that's our story. And then our story connected with you as well. And then we see that Yah has used you and is using you to be instrumental in nations and to go into places where we have had relationships with churches where they are saying, we want to have this understanding that you have, Jess, of this Hebrewic understanding. And that's where Yah's partnered us. Not only here, we've got other countries that we're going to do in the same dynamic. And we just learn from you. As a family, Storm, Dallas, Rio, we learn from you. As a ministry, we won't learn from you. And I have a great team. And look at these beautiful brothers and sisters. They're all part of our family. They're all part of us. And we want to honor Yah, Yahusha, and the Ruach HaKodesh in your life, your calling. You are so unique. And I don't mean that from a point of giving you adulation, but from your academia to your studies to all the years that you put in. And I pain with you when you pain. Everyone here does. We know the struggles that you go through. Today, on this day that we understand where Pesach is and how we position us, we even thank Yah for your life and Yahusha for your life and coming here today because we're ready to receive and understand and have the keys that we've been searching for so long. So we really honor you and thank you, Stephen, for coming here today. Thank you so much. You're sharing with us. Well, I want you to explain because I can't do as good a job as you, what you're sharing today.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jess. And, this is really tremendous for me to be back here in Michael's church and, here in Lagos. And so I have to say, bom dia, ¿cómo estás? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's see here. Let me turn this mic off. I want one mic at a time. Okay, there we go. All right. So, yeah, it's so wonderful to be with the Holland group again. And we had such a great time at Sukkot in Holland. It was terrific. There was a lot of baptisms that went on there, which was also fantastic. Since then, we've had a lot of things happen. There's been many, many baptisms and much discussion all over the world. But I want to share with you today what is kind of a cutting edge for us now, which is that I've been working for the last, let's call it 16 months. No, it's 18 months. I've been working on an amended version of the Sefer, if you will. And we are preparing, in fact, a short version, a 66-book version. And the conclusion was rendered that it's far better to reach the Christian church with the name of Yah than it is to belabor the book of Enoch. And as much as I love the book of Enoch, and I'm currently editing Enoch and Jubilees and Jasher as we speak, and those books are really quite tremendous. I mean, they are tremendous, really. And more and more research helping me dramatically. And so it's really a combination of efforts. There were many, passage that was correct, and that one is probably wrong. And what about this? And have you looked at that? And so really it's a collaborative effort, but we were the group that was willing to publish it. And the instant we published this effort, people came to us and said, aren't you worried you're going to burn in hell for publishing that? First thing that was said to me, very first presentation we made. And fortunately, there was somebody there from Ethiopia. And he took a look at the book and went, oh, no, 87 books, there's no problem with this at all. Nothing. But the Christian who had grown up in the Westminster Confession Church was very restricted about reading other books. And since then, I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with what is the canon, who canonized what and when, what was the reason for limiting the books, which was the Westminster Confession. What was the reason for that? Why did they do it? And who was responsible for limiting the books? And it comes down to the same group over and over again. Well, it's a group really who really should have no say, because we are interested in the words of those who believe in the Mashiach. If you are a Mashiach denier, I'm really not too interested in your opinion, because it is not an opinion that is endued with the Ruach HaKodesh. It is a spirit of blindness. This is what the scripture says. And it's also very interesting that in the book of Jeremiah, it is written that the name of Yahweh would be taken out of the mouths of the Yahudim who are still in Egypt. Taken out. So they cannot say it. But because they cannot say it, does not cast out all of Yasharel from saying the same thing. And as we say, Ani Yasharel, as my friend Carol brought us, I am Yasharel. Are you guys already tired of my discussion? Oh, okay. All right. So at any rate, so I'm going to be reading to you from some of the new changes that have occurred in the Sefer. And and this week, in fact, is going to be a blast, because we're going to be reading most of the New Testament this week. And I want to go through the New Testament because I think it's important for us to review many of the words that have been so problematic for people over the years. And a lot of those problems have been because the scripture has been misconstrued. I mean, like, I'll give you an example. There's a passage that's found in most English Bible that says, where Paul says, and I magnify myself. Now, somebody might read that and think, you know what an egomaniac this guy is, right? He must be some kind of a narcissist over there magnifying himself. Well, when I read the passage in the Greek, it says, I honor my office. Oh, well, that's a big difference, isn't it? Or how about the passage that says, well, if a woman appears in church with short hair, she should have her head shaved. Well, no, that's not what it says. It says if a woman does have her head shaved, then she should cover her head before she prays or prophesies in church, because otherwise she's obscene. This makes sense, doesn't it? All of a sudden, these passages start to make sense. So what we've found is that quite often in the scripture, there's a lot of contradictions. So you may not notice the contradictions because your pastor has told you, oh, these scriptures are inerrant. And then you have these big contradictions and you're going, wait a minute. Didn't that just say? Didn't Judas hang himself? Oh no, his guts fell out in Potter's field. Didn't Mashiach cast out the demons from one guy? Oh no, it was 2 demoniacs. Didn't he cure the blind guy? No, it was 2 blind guys. Right? All of these things, you're asking yourself the question, okay, how do I justify this? Well, there's a couple of problems that are really huge, and I mean huge. And I actually did a video on this called Fatal Flaws. And it's a huge problem because the very first verse of the New Testament says, and Yahushua HaMashiach, the son of Abraham, the son of David. That's Matthew 1:1. Can you prove he's the son of David? You can't. Not in your typical English Bible. Because, of course, Matthew 1 gives you a genealogy that goes from Abraham to the Messiah. And in that genealogy, there are a number of women that are named, but not counted. Rahab is named, Ruth is named, Bathsheba is named, Tamar is named, and Miriam is named. But all of those previous 4 women are not counted in the 14 generations from Abraham to David, in the 14 generations from David to Yekoniyahu, and in the 14 generations from Yekoniyahu to the Mashiach. Those women are not counted because you cannot construe the DNA of the patrilineal lineage to the wife. Therefore, the number count does not add up, and Furthermore, if you're talking about Joseph, the husband of Miriam, in Matthew 1, and you're talking about Joseph, the supposed father, in Luke 3, that's the same person. How come those genealogies are diametrically opposed? Why? Why is one the son of David through Nathan, and the other is the son of David through Solomon? Why is that? Because somebody got one word wrong. And that word is husband instead of father. And when you realize that Joseph was also the name of her father, boom, the whole contradiction goes away. So with the contradiction gone, now I can successfully prove that Mashiach is not only of the line of David, but he is the seed of the woman. The seed of the woman that would crush the head of the seed of the serpent. You see? Okay. Now, when it comes to Pesach, you read in the New Testament, which I call the Brit Chadashah, the renewed covenant, the Brit Chadashah. You read in the renewed covenant, it says, and then it came upon the Pesach, the feast of the Jews. Well, okay, the Jews were observing it, but is it a feast belonging to the Jews? And I say to you, When you talk about these feasts, they belong to the believers in Mashiach. That's who they belong to. The chosen people. The ones who by the confession of their lips and by the belief in their heart are children of Abraham and heirs according to the promise. And this chosen group of people, the children of Abraham, who have confessed Mashiach with their lips and believe in their heart, these feasts belong to them. So Mashiach says, okay, I'm getting ready to be crucified. So the Jews who have the calendar all wrong don't appreciate the right day. So we're going to go ahead and do this on March 11th, and then we'll see how it turns out. No, that's not what happened. And he didn't say, hey, any old day is good enough for the crucifixion. What difference does it make as long as I'm crucified, rise again, and ascend? Is that what he said? No, he said, you go into town and see this guy, who is probably Joseph of Arimathea, and tell him we need the upper room. And we shall keep the Pesach. We shall keep the Pesach. Well, people ask the question in the Christian church, well, what would Jesus do? Why are you speculating? Why are you asking that question? You have an informative text. The question should be, what did Yahusha do? Not what would he do? What did he do? And what did he do? He kept the Pesach. And not only to keep the Pesach, but he kept it according to the Torah. The Torah says what? On the 14th you shall kill the lamb, and you shall eat it in the evening. The Jewish Seder is tomorrow night, the first of Matzah. The Pesach is the night before. Mashiach kept the Pesach. He didn't keep Matzah. He kept the Pesach. Why did he keep the Pesach? What did John the Baptist say? Behold the Lamb of Elohim who takes away the world. How did John know it was the Lamb, that he was the Lamb? Because he was the son of Peretz. You might say, well, what has that got to do with the price of tea in China? Well, we're not talking about tea, fortunately. But when you talk about Peretz, there were two sons born to Tamar. Two twins, Zerach and Peretz. Zerach means your seed. Peretz means the one who breaches, the one who breaks in, the one who explodes. So Peretz was not the firstborn, he was the secondborn, but he was the first one to completely come out. And the firstborn had been marked with a red ribbon around his wrist, Zerach. Well, the red ribbon is the mark of the scapegoat, the one who is sent into the wilderness that we don't see anymore. Peretz, on the other hand, unmarked with the red ribbon, is going to be the lamb sacrificed for the sins of the world. So Mashiach necessarily came from the line of Peretz. This too is in Matthew 1. And he came from the line of Peretz to be the Lamb of the world. Now, what we see coming into Matzah is very interesting, because Matzah says what? You shall remove all the leaven from your house before Matzah begins. because a little leaven leavens the whole lump. So remove all the leaven from your house. Okay, so Mashiach, the Lamb of Elohim, dies on the day of the Pesach, hours before sundown, when matzah would begin. And in his death, he took all of the sin from the house. Clothed in the sins of the world, he took all of the sins from the house. So matzah, too, is a feast for us. You see, Pesach is a feast for us. Matzah is a feast for us. What about the wave offering of the first fruits? Who was the first fruits to rise from the dead? Well, Mashiach. The first fruits is a feast for us. Oh, well, of those feasts, Shavuot, that's a Jewish feast. That couldn't have anything. Oh, really? Shavuot? Pentecost? What happened on Pentecost? You remember the disciples? Let's talk about them. Anywhere you go, we're going. You're going to die. We're willing to die with you. Until that moment comes. Then it's like, let's get out of here. Look at this. We don't want any part of that. Hey, steer clear. Everybody steer clear of the cross. Get out of there. What's Peter doing? I don't know that guy. He's running around telling the people, right? I don't know. No, not me. So who shows up at the cross? The women. The women show up at the cross. Where's the disciples? They're keeping their head down. Speaking in Galilean, trying to keep from being caught. So Mashiach comes back to them and says, you guys, I don't want you going anywhere doing any evangelizing or anything. Just, I want you just to hunker down. Right? Just go back to the upper room and just stay there until I tell you otherwise. And they go back to the upper room, and what happens? Tongues of fire come upon them on what day? Shavuot. The tongues of fire come upon them on Shavuot. The birthday not only of the church, but the birthday also of the Ten Commandments. That's when Moshe presented the Ten Commandments. Shavuot. He presented the Ten Commandments on Shavuot, and 3,000 died. The Ruach HaKodesh comes upon the disciples on Shavuot, and 3,000 are saved. Okay? So of the 7 feasts given to us in Leviticus 23, the first 4 are obviously belonging to us. They're belonging to us of the Mashiach. We who are the Mashiachim, they belong to us. What about those feasts in the fall? Well, those are yet to come. Those haven't happened yet. We have to wait for those to get here. Hey. When you read Luke, Luke tells us a different story. Because he tells us that Mashiach, in Luke 4, went out to the desert and fasted for 40 days. Okay, I suppose he did that on any random day. Well, I think I'll just head out today and go fasting. It was the first day of the 6th month. And he fasted for 40 days. And how do we know this? Because it goes on to tell us in Luke 4. Then he came back to Capernaum, and he went into the synagogue for to stand up and read, as was his custom. So not WWJD, but WDYD. What did Yahusha actually do? Instead of speculating what would he do, what did he do? What he did do was go into the Shabbat and stand up to read, as was his custom. And when he stood up to read, the Ruach Yahweh has anointed me to preach the Besarah to the poor. And then he declares the acceptable year of Yah. To proclaim the acceptable year of Yah had to be done on Yom Kippur, where he had fasted for 40 days coming into Yom Kippur, and proclaims the acceptable year of Yah. Well, what about the Feast of Tabernacles? How did he fulfill that? Okay. So people, I love it how people speculate. Well, we think that the Messiah was born in the spring. Why do you think the Messiah was born in the spring? Because that's when the sheep are still going to be in the field. Couldn't have been born in December because the sheep would have already been in the pen. So the sheep were out in the field, had to be in April. How about Luke tells you exactly? Luke tells you, but you don't see it because the Christian church doesn't read the Old Testament. Because the Old Testament got nailed to the cross. So you've got to walk into a church and you can see there's a big spike going through the Old Testament. But when you read the Old Testament, you see what is Luke talking about in Luke 1, verse 2. And Zechariah, in the course of Aviyahu. What? In the course of Aviyahu. What does that mean? Well, they were out playing golf. They were on the same 19 holes. No. The course of Aviyahu, of course, was the course of Levite priests that would serve for a week. Actually, they served for 8 days because the Shabbat overlapped. So, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 7 weeks, 7 weeks. Yeah. The course of Abiyahu, the 10th course puts Zechariah serving in mid-June. And after that, he goes home and Elisheba gets pregnant. Miraculously, because she too was barren. So Elisheba gets pregnant. So she got pregnant in early July, late June. When was the baby born? March. When was the baby born? Passover. Who was born on Passover? John the Baptist. So when was Mashiach born? Well, Luke tells you 6 months later. Now, why is this difficult? Why is this difficult? If John the Baptist was born on the Passover, then when was Mashiach born? 6 months later. When? First day of Feast of Tabernacles. What does the Gospel of John say? The Word was made flesh and tabernacled among us. Born on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, circumcised on the 8th day. The last great day is how they refer to it in the New Testament, not the Old Testament. The New Testament says last great day. Circumcised on the last great day, and when they took him into the temple, what did the people recognize? Hey, this kid was born on the first day of Tabernacles. And not only that, he was born under a blood moon eclipse. So Shimon says, this is the consolation of Yasharel. And Hannah says, this is the consolation of Yasharel. Two witnesses testifying to his birth. So we know that the Feast of Tabernacles is a feast of celebration, not a feast of mourning, not a feast of affliction, not a feast of fasting, but a feast of celebration. Some people say, well, you're not supposed to celebrate your birthday except Mashiach's birthday, which goes on for 8 days. Well, we've decided to modify that in the church, make it 45 minutes on December 25th. Well, can I ask you the question? Why did you decide to use December 25th? Because everybody knows the winter solstice is important. Now, here's the problem they ran into in the church. If December 25th is the birthday of Mashiach, then when was the circumcision? Well, it was 8 days later. Did the church have a feast of circumcision? Yeah, they sure did. In both Eastern Orthodoxy and in the Catholic Church, the Feast of Circumcision. You know what they call that feast now? New Year's Day. Hey, can't you just see Pope Gregory? I got one for him. Let's switch over the New Year to the Feast of Circumcision. Okay, that's got it going on. Yeah, right. And we all know that isn't even close to the real calendar. Why not? Well, because September means the 7th month. October means the 8th month. November means the 9th month. December means the 10th month. So where's January? Hey, that's month number 11. Where's February? That's number 12. Where do you add the extra day? Well, to the end month of the year, which is in not December. It's over there in February. Now look, Pope Gregory's calendar is a very easy calendar to remember and to know. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except that one guy, which doesn't have 31. It has only 28, except on occasion when it has 29. And if the truth be told, we're still a quarter of a day short. Everybody remember that poem, right? Easy. Piece of cake. We know that calendar. Just like that. But by the way, which one is the, how do we split that up again? The 31 and 30? Right? So we can see that the 7 feasts. Now you say, well, what about the Feast of Trumpets? Well, the Feast of Trumpets is a very interesting feast as well. It's a feast that really is the only one that tells us how to calculate a month by the new moon, right? Calculate the month by the new moon. All right. So now we understand when we talk about the Pecach, we talk about the 7 feasts of Leviticus 23, they belong to Yahweh first and foremost, and they belong to us. We are children of those feasts. Most assuredly, they belong to us. They mean something very particular to us. They mean something that is so critical and so important to who we are. And coming into the Pecach is going to become extremely important. Okay, so let me read to you from the Besara Matityahu, chapter 26. And it happened that when Yahusha had finished all these sayings, he said to his Talmudim, you know that within 2 days is the Pecach. And the Ben Adam is betrayed to be crucified. Then the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people assembled to the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas. And they consulted how they might take Yahusha by subtlety and kill him. That's going to be subtle, right? Let's make it subtle. Now you recall that Mashiach accuses them in the Gospel of John. He says, hey, you're the guys who killed Zechariah between the porch and the temple. They thought they had gotten away with it and that nobody knew, but Mashiach knew. And who was the Zechariah that they killed in the porch? John the Baptist's father. And who was John the Baptist? He was the Kohen Gadol. He was the true high priest. And they knew it. They knew he was the true high priest, not Caiaphas, who bought the office. Now, when Yahusha was in Bethany in the house of Shimon the jar maker, there came to him a woman with an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and she poured it on his head as he sat. But when his Talmudim saw, they had indignation, saying, what purpose is this waste? This ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. And when Yahusha understood, he said to them, why do you trouble the woman? She has worked a good work upon me. You will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. In that she has poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. So be it, I say to you, wherever this basara shall be preached in the whole world, this shall also be told what this woman has done as a memorial of her. Now, let me just say a word about this word basara, because this is often translated as gospel or good news. What is the good news? What is the good news? The good news is really quite incredible when you look at it, because the good news is what? When you go back and you look at the creation of the faith, it hinges around a guy named Abraham. And Abraham had a wife named Sarah, and Sarah was barren. But Yah came to them way late in life and said, I'm going to give you a child. They both laughed. You have got to be kidding me. I'm a good 40 years past having any kids, and you say now I'm going to have a kid. Yeah, that's right. Okay, all right, okay, yeah, all right. So did she believe? No. It's not happening, Abraham. Maybe what we need to do is get a surrogate mom in here. So they get the stranger, Hagar. Hagar means the stranger, not Hagar. Hagar. They get Hagar, the stranger. She comes in. Yeah, I'll be the surrogate mom until she has the baby. Hey, I'm not going anywhere. No way. I had the baby. Hey, my kid. Now I'm the real wife. And so Abraham's like, well, we got to kind of do that. Ishmael, he's pretty good. And he starts praying to Yah. Why don't you bless Ishmael? And Yah's like, hey, I told you I'm going to give you a son. Now, when you see the sacrifice of Yitzchak, right? Take Yitzchak, your only begotten son. Was Yitzchak the only begotten son of Abraham? No. Ishmael was born before him. But he was the only begotten son of Sarah. Because Sarah, who was barren, could not give birth, but Yah did something to place a miraculous ovum in her womb. Okay, so this is the miracle. The miracle is that the line of Mashiach would be gifted by the miracle in Sarah. Basara. You see? Basara. So this is why Matthew 1 begins with Abraham and not Adam, because the miracle begins with Sarah and Abraham in the seed of the woman. And the whole miracle is completed 42 generations in the seed of the woman. You see, with the miraculous Y DNA being given from the Ruach HaKodesh to the Son. So now we have a miraculous empty DNA in Sarah and a miraculous Y DNA in Miriam, giving us a miraculous one-of-a-kind DNA in Mashiach, not repeated. No children from Mashiach. Forget the myth of Mary Magdalene married the Messiah. And they moved to northern India and lived out 80 years. Muslim story, nope, incorrect. Mary Magdalene was actually married to Eleazar, the guy raised from the grave. Okay, and so he says, what? Then one of the 12, Kad Yehuda Iskariot. Well, we know him as Judas Iscariot. So Judas Iscariot means what? Nothing. Judas Iscariot. What's Iscariot? It must have been his last name. Ishkirot, on the other hand, means townsman. Ish, man, Kiriot, town, townsman. Judas, the townsman, went to the chief priest and said, hey, what would you give me if I betray him to you? $50? Nope. They agreed with him for 30 pieces of silver. Prophesied. And from that time on, he sought the opportunity to betray him. But before the feast of Matzah drew on, the Talmudim came to Yahushua saying, where will you have us to prepare a place for you to eat the Pesach? And he said, go into the city to such a man and say to him, the rabbi says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Pesach at your house with my Talmudim. I will keep the Pesach at your house with my Talmudim. WWWDYD. What did Yahushua do? What did he do? We don't have to speculate. He kept the Pesach. And the Talmudim did as Yahushua had appointed them, and they readied the Pesach. Now, when the evening came, he sat down with the 12. And as they ate, he said, so be it, I say to you, that one of you shall betray me. And they were exceedingly sorrowful, and every one of them began to say to him, Adonai, is it I? And he answered and said to them, he that dips a hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me. And the Ben Adam goes that it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Ben Adam is betrayed. It had been good for that man if he had not been born. Then Yehudah, which betrayed him, answered and said, Rabbi, is it I? And he said to him, you have so said. Now, you would think the rest of the guys would be sitting there going, did you see that? He said it was him. They didn't. They missed it. Okay? And as they were eating, Yahushua took the bread, giving blessing, breaking it to give to the Talmudim, and said, take, eat, this is my body. Quite a clarification. You might recall the most difficult passages in the New Testament. What are they? If you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no part of me. What? Oh, yeah. And my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. And what does it say? We're not doing anything more with this guy. Let's get out of here. He lost virtually everybody but the 12 Talmudim. Now he's going to tell them, I speak to you of spiritual things. That's what he tells them when he's done talking that passage. I speak to you of spiritual things. Right? And so what we have come to discover, what I've come to discover, when you're talking about the bread and the cup, the bread and the wine, who's the first to present the bread and the wine? Melchizedek. Abraham's out there warring. He's got his guys. How bad were those guys? 300 guys beat up on 5 kings. And he comes back with Lot and all of his cattle and his wife and everything else. And he comes back into town. And here's the king that he hasn't yet beat up on, Melchizedek. And Melchizedek comes out of a town called Peace, Shalom. And he comes out carrying what? Bread and wine. He comes out carrying bread and wine. Let's make a covenant between me and you. The bread and the wine and the voice of a covenant. But what is the bread and the wine? What is the body and the blood? The body is the word of Elohim. The blood is the testimony of Mashiach, which is the spirit of prophecy. All prophecy in the Old Testament does not point to some prognostication of some future war. All prophecy in the Old Testament points to Mashiach exclusively, one way or the other. The spirit of prophecy is Mashiach. The testimony of Mashiach is the blood. The word of Elohim is the flesh. And when he said, if you do not eat this flesh, you have no part of me, that means you have to read and understand the scripture. Don't come to me saying, well, you know, my pastor said that I don't get to read that passage. Somebody told me that I can't read it. Who was the one that told you you can't read it? Oh, the guy that puts his pants on both legs at the same time. He said, I put my pants on both legs at the same time, whereas you put your pants on one leg at a time. Therefore, I get to read it and you don't. I read it, but you can't read it. Why not? Well, what's it say in 4 Ezra? It says, because those other books give you wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And that's not for you. How can you be dumb cattle if you have wisdom, knowledge, and understanding? That's a question. Okay. Anyway, he took the cup and he said, this is my blood of the renewed covenant, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. Take and drink all of it. But I say to you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom. And when they had praised in song, they went out into the Mount of Olives. When they had praised in song. Oh, yeah. There's something about a good praise song. There's something about a good praise song. And you know, one of the things I love so much in the world is this word, hallelujah. Right? Spoken all over the world, hallelujah. Hallelujah. We praise Yah. Now, some people say, well, you know, you can't really be sure that that's the name. It could be Yehovah. I never heard anybody say hallelujah. It's hallelujah. Well, if you think I'm dead wrong, then what does Benjamin Netanyahu have to say about that? Oh, it's not Benjamin Netanyahu, is it? It's Benjamin Netanyahu. What did his dad know that you don't know? He knew that the Yod He Vav was pronounced Yahu. That's what he knew. How did he know that? Because he walked down the streets of Jerusalem where they have every name in English, Hebrew, and Arabic on signs about that big. That way, when you're driving, it's impossible for you to have any idea where you are in Jerusalem. But when you go, you can see the transliteration of the Hebrew. Oh, is that Isaiah Street? No, it's Yeshayahu Street. Is that Jeremiah Street? No, that's Yirmiyahu Street. Is that Zechariah Street? No, that's Zechariahu Street. And that's how they have it transliterated throughout all of Jerusalem. 167 names ending with Yod He Vav pronounced Yahu, not Yeho. Yahu. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And then Yahusha said to them, all of you shall be offended because of me this night, for it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad. This is something that we often don't realize, that when a strike comes to the believers, we're under the impression we've been persecuted. But Yah has his methodology of spreading the good news. How does he do it? And now you're spread out. Now you're suddenly spread out, right? But it's an incredible what happened with behind this. But when I have risen again, I will go before you into Galil. And Kepha answered and said to him, though everyone is offended because of you, I will never be offended. And Yahushua said to him, so be it, I say to you, that this night before the cock crows, you shall deny me 3 times. And Kepha said to him, though I should die with you, yet I will not deny you. Likewise, all the Talmudim so said. So they were all in agreement. We're willing to die with you tonight until the pedal hit the metal. Then came Yahushua with them to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to the Talmudim, sit here while I go and pray. And he took Kepha with him and the 2 sons of Zabdi, and it began to be sorrowful and very heavy. Then he said to them, my soul is extremely sorrowful, even to death. Wait here and watch with me. And he went a little further and he fell on his face and praying, saying, "Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Now, this is an important thing because, I remember when I was questioning my belief, I was like, well, it's easy for you, Yah, to tell us people what we should do. You're not the one that has to face death. You're not the one that has to face death. You who's going to live forever. How do you know what it's like to have consciousness in a body that will die? And how do we know? Look what we see. Here he is, the Ben Adam and the Ben Elohim facing death and who will experience the most brutal, humiliating, bloodthirsty, defacing, defaming death there is to have. All of that. He faces all of that. Does he know? Does Yah know what it is to die? Yeah, exactly. In every respect. And he came to the Talmudim and found them asleep and said to Kepha, "What? Couldn't you stay awake for an hour? Watch and pray that you don't enter into temptation. The breath is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak." And he went away again, and the second time he prayed and said, "Oh, my Father, if it is not possible that this cup pass by me, except that I drink it, cause it to be that your will be done." And he came and he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them and he went away again and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then he came to his Talmudim. So here he prayed this thing 3 times. "Let this cup pass from me if it's your will. But if not, let your will be done." 3 times he prays this. Then he came to his Talmudim and said to them, "Sleep now and take rest, because the hour is at hand, and the Ben Adam is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that betrays me." And while he spoke, lo, Yehudah, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves, and from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now he who betrayed him gave them a sign, saying, "Whomsoever I shall kiss, the same as he. Hold him fast." Now, this is a very interesting story that takes place here, because what happens to Mashiach is something that we would see repeated in the States. And so here you see these guys, like, they don't know who it is they want to kill. We're not going to be able to recognize if it's too dark. Really? You're not going to be able to tell the guy you're looking to kill? That you've been hungering to kill? You've already decided you're going to kill? You were out there when he raised the guy from the dead? Well, unless Judas points him out, we're not going to be able to get it. And Mashiach's going to say to them, "Hey, you could have taken me anytime you want, when I was teaching in the synagogue, when I was hanging out downtown, when I was beating up the merchants." Well, this exact same thing happened to David Koresh. Anybody recognize that name? Okay, David Koresh, he ran a fellowship in Waco, Texas. I don't remember the name of the fellowship now. What was it? Yeah, Branch Davidian. And at the Branch Davidian, there were 53 women and children living there, along with, I don't know, maybe a dozen guys. And they were pretty well armed and so forth, and they had a compound. Anyway, the ATF shows up, and Koresh called them and said, "Hey, I was in town shopping 2 days ago. You could have arrested me right in town. What's the beef? What's this? What's with all these cars showing up and all these armored vehicles and all these people in helmets and stuff? You could have arrested me downtown." "Oh, no, we're not here for that." And so they went on this standoff. Now, this standoff was very interesting because it happened right after Bill Clinton became president. It happened on April 19th. 1993. And there were 4 ATF agents that were killed, and they burned the place to the ground. Now, after they burned the place to the ground, there was a bus that they had buried in the ground as a fallout shelter. And it had a tunnel built from the basement that went to the bus. And the bus had 2 stacks to allow oxygen in it. Well, this is where the women and children went to escape the fire. They were all hunkered down in the bus. And the ATF had planted cameras in there and microphones in there so they could see them. And so what they did was they bladed the tunnel between the building and the bus so they couldn't get out. And then they pumped the bus full of CS gas, a gas that was banned by the Geneva Convention, and they gassed all of them and then set it on fire and then bladed it. But it's interesting that Mashiach makes the same argument here. Okay. And Yahusha said to him, and forthwith he came into Yahusha, and he said, "My Adonai," and kissed him. And Yahusha said to him, "Friend, from where do you come?" Then they came and laid hands on Yahusha and took him. And behold, one of them, which were with Yahusha, stretched out a hand and drew a sword and struck the servant of the high priest and smote off his ear. Then Yahusha said to him, "Put your sword again into its place, for those who take the sword shall perish with the sword." A quote from the book of Revelation. "Do you think that I cannot pray to my Father now, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of messengers? But how then shall the scriptures be fulfilled, that this must be so?" In that same hour, Yahusha said to the multitudes, "Have you come out as against a thief with swords and staffs to take me? I sat daily with you teaching in the temple. I sat daily with you teaching in the temple, and you did not take hold of me. But all this was done so that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the Talmudim forsook him and fled. Let's get out of here. And they took hold of Yahusha to be led away to Kepha the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were assembled. But Kepha followed him from afar off to the priest's palace, went in and sat with the servants to see the end. I'll just nonchalantly wander in there. Maybe put on a hoodie, right? Now the chief priests and the elders and all council sought false witness against Yahusha to put him to death. They found none. Though many false witnesses came, yet they found none. At last, 2 false witnesses came, and the last 2 said, this one said, "I can destroy the temple of Elohim and build it in 3 days." Okay. Yeah. Sounds like a contractor claim. What are we talking about? All right. And the high priest arose and said to him, "Do you answer nothing? What do these witnesses have against you?" But Yahusha held his peace. And the high priest answered and said to him, "I adjure you by the living El that you tell us whether you be Hamashiach, the Ben Elohim." And Yahusha said to him, "You have said it. Nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter shall you see the Ben Adam sitting at the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, "He has spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now you've heard his blasphemy, haven't you? What do you think? Isn't that blasphemy?" And he answered and said, "He is guilty of death." Well, yeah, we'll get there. Then they spat in his face and buffeted him, and others struck him with their palms, saying, "Prophesy to us, Mashiach, who is he who smote you?" Now, this is a very interesting dynamic, I think. Very interesting dynamic. Because people, when they conclude that they have achieved moral correctness, then they can treat another human being like he's an animal. Oh, you were convicted in a court. Put him in a small concrete room for the next 22 years. Prophesy. Who is he who smote you? Now Kepha sat outside the palace, and a maiden came to him saying, "Well, you were also with Yahusha of Galilee." But he denied it before him, saying, "I do not know what you say." And when he went out into the porch, another one saw him and said to those who were there, "This one was also with Yahusha the Nazarene." And again he denied with an oath, "I do not know the man." And a short time later they came to those who stood by and said to Kepha, "Surely you are also one of them, for your speech betrays you." Then he began to curse and to swear, saying, "I do not know the man." And immediately the cock crew. And Kepha remembered the word of Yahusha, which said to him, "Before the cock crows, you shall deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. Now, what language was Kepha speaking? Anybody know? Galilean. He was speaking Galilean, not Aramaic, not Latin, not Greek, Galilean. When the morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Yahusha to put him to death. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate. Now, here's the problem. Okay, he deserves the death penalty. Okay, has it occurred to you that we can't give the death penalty? Well, now we'll get around that problem. We got our methods. Let's deliver him up to Pontius Pilate. Those Romans are willing to kill anybody. Then Yehuda, who had betrayed him, when he saw that he was condemned, repented and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priest and elders, saying, I have sinned that I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they said, what is that to us? You see to it. And he threw the pieces of silver into the temple and departed and went and hanged himself. Now, here's what's interesting. He threw the 30 pieces of silver into the temple. So did he have 30 pieces of silver anymore? No. Who had the 30 pieces of silver? The chief elders. They were the ones who bought the potter's field. Whoever it was who'd taken that 30 pieces of silver, he's the one that bought the potter's field. He's the one whose guts fell out in that field, not Judas. Kind of clears that contradiction up, doesn't it? Okay. And the chief priest took the silver pieces and said, it is not lawful to put them into the treasury because it is the price of blood. And they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in it. See, it says it right there. Who bought the potter's field? The chief priests. And they took count. Okay, and wherefore that field was called the field of blood to this day. Then it was fulfilled, that which was spoken by Zechariah the prophet, saying, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him that was valued, whom the children of Yasharel did value, and gave them for the potter's field, as Yahweh had commanded me. Boom. You see that? Click, 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 click. And Yahusha stood before the governor. The governor asked him, saying, are you the king of the Yahudim? And Yahusha said to him, as you say. And when he was accused by the chief priest and the elders, he answered nothing. Then Pilate said to him, do you not hear how many things they witness against you? And he never answered him, not a word, so much that the governor marveled greatly. Now at the feast, the governor was wanting to release the people a prisoner. And they had a note. Bar Abba, the son. But who is Mashiach if he's not the son of the Father? But here's someone called the son of the Father. Therefore, when they gathered Pilate to them, they said, whom do you desire that I release you? The son of the Father or the son of the Father? Bar Abba or Yahusha, who is called Mashiach, for he knew that they had delivered him out of envy. When he sat down in the judgment seat, his woman spoke to him, saying, have nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things in this day in a dream because of him. So his wife knew. And she went to Pilate and said, She had that intuition, She had the dream. Now, this is a lesson for all of you husbands out there. When your wife has some intuition, pay attention, right? And because Pilate did not pay attention, you know what happens to Pilate? He jumps off a cliff on a mountain in Switzerland. And the people who live in Switzerland know this. They know the very mountain where he jumped. Okay. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask for Bar Abba and destroy Yahusha. And the governor answered and said to them, which of the two do you desire that I release you? And they said, Bar Abba. And Pilate said to them, what shall I do then with this Yahusha who's called the Mashiach? And all of them said to him, let him be crucified. And the governor said, why? What evil has he done? But they cried out even more, saying, let him be crucified. Now, when you think about Pilate weighing this, you think about this, you talk to anybody that's been in the military, okay? And in America, we have a lot of guys like this. They get sent to Afghanistan, they get sent to Iran, and they shoot people. And many times they're shooting civilians. And many times they know they're shooting civilians. And they know that they have orders. Some of these guys fly in the drones, Oh, we have to shoot that missile into that funeral session. Well, there's only one bad guy, and there's 36 people that are his family, including women and children. Put a missile in there. What do you think happens to that guy that pulled that trigger? They don't do well. They come back to the States, and they're suffering from PTSD because they go to bed every night thinking about the life they took. Clint Eastwood once said it in a movie. He said, when you kill a man, you take everything he has and everything he ever will have. Right? It's a very interesting way of putting it. But the fact is, when you terminate another life, it doesn't leave you. And here Pilate is saying, okay, I'm going to put this guy to death. This is going to be on me putting this guy to death. I want to know what he did. What did he do? Would I put him to death for what he did? When Pilate saw that he could not prevail, but atonement was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude. I wash my hands of your demolition. I wash my hands. Not me. I'm washing my hands right here. Saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. You see to it. Then all the people answered and said, his blood is upon us and on our children. Now, wait a minute. A lot of people say this is a curse. His blood be upon us and upon our children. Is that a curse? The blood of Mashiach? We're going to put the blood of Mashiach over the doorpost of our lives tonight. Is that a curse? I don't think so. Then he released Bar Abba to them, and when he had scourged Yahusha, he was delivered to be crucified. And the soldiers of the governor took Yahusha into the common hall and gathered the whole band. And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. Now, this robe that they put on him, just a few years back, Shimon Maccabee had been given a purple robe and a gold belt by Rome. And so he outlawed wearing that color. Only the king could wear that color. So when they put this robe on him, Pilate was saying, this is a king. He's telling them, this is a king. The purple robe says it. And when they had platted a crown of thorns, they put a crown on him. Then they put it upon his head and a reed in his right hand. He took a rod like unto a reed like unto a rod. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him and said, Hail, King of the Yahudim. Well, they may have mocked him, but did you know that Pilate, as a matter of Roman law, declared him to be the king of the Yahudim? Did you know that? He said, let me present to you the king of the Yahudim. Okay, then he puts it up on a sign. He puts it up on a sign in 3 languages. It's one thing for him to declare it. That's an oral law. He could repeal it that night. Well, I said king of the Yahudim, but now I'm demoting him. So that's all done. But instead, he put it in writing. Once he put it in writing, only the Roman Senate could reverse it, and the Roman Senate never did. So he put up there in the Latin, right? He put Jesu, Netzarim, Rex, Judeim, INRI. But he also put it up in Greek, Basilius Judei, INBI. Harashon, spasiba. But he also put it up in Hebrew. What did it say in Hebrew? Yahusha Hanetzeri Vemelech HaYahudim, Yod He Vav He. Problem. Okay. All right. And they spit upon him and took the reed and smote him on the head. And after that, they had mocked him. They took off the robe and put his own raiment on him and led him away to crucify. And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Shimon by name, and they compelled him to bear his cross. Now, here's something that is very interesting because we got a lot of feedback on the word cross. In the Greek, the word storos. So the JWs, Jehovah's Witnesses, will call me up and say, it's steak. Steak, it's only steak. It says storos, only steak. Well, the truth be told, that the Roman crucifixion device was what was called the pendiculum storos. That's what they called it. You can't find this anymore because all reference to it has been deleted, but it's called the pendiculum storos. And the pendiculum storos was a situation where you had a stake in the ground, and then the crucified person would carry the pendiculum. And so they had the pendiculum, so they would have him carry the pendiculum like this over his head. You carry that out, and then when they got to the stake, they could just nail his hands to the pendiculum, then hoist him up and pop him on top of the stake. And then the Greeks used to just nail you anywhere. Anybody got a nail gun? That's the spot. You know, it's like that guy in the States, right? He died mysteriously, committed suicide by shooting himself 7 times in the back of the head with a nail gun. It was the worst case of COVID anybody had ever seen. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. So, and as they came, and they took him to a place called Golgotha, or Golgoleth, the place of the skull. Now, when you see Golgotha, you read this in the English text. Oh, they took him out to Golgotha, the place of the skull. What does that mean? It means nothing to you, right? Until you find out that Goliath, his name in the Hebrew, was Goliath Gath. Goliath Gath. Golgotha was the place of, not any skull, the place of Goliath's skull. Okay? Golgotha, it was the place of Goliath's skull. They gave him a vinegar to drink mingled with gall, and when he had tasted, he would not drink it. And they crucified him and parted his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled that's which the prophet spoke. They parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots. And sitting down, they watched him there. They set over his head an accusation written, "This is Yahushua, the king of the Yahudim." Then there were two thieves crucified with him, one on the right hand and one on the left. When they had passed by, reviling him and wagging their heads, saying, "You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you're the Ben Elohim, come down from the cross." Imagine if he had done that. We would have no redemption today. He would have done the same thing that Adam did. When the test came, he ate from the fruit. I used to be a big fan of Ayn Rand, and she wrote this very famous book in 1953 called Atlas Shrugged. And the premise was that when socialism became too much, that the real makers and shakers of the world, who were building the world's finances and economies of scale, would just say, we're not going to do this anymore, and shrug. And then they'd all fly off to Galt's Gulch, listen to some Rachmaninoff, and wait for the lights of New York to go out. And I used to follow this woman to some degree until I came to realize that in her book, Atlas Shrugged, but in my book, Mashiach was faithful unto death. And that's the difference. That's the difference. And likewise, also the chief priest mocked him with their scribes and elders and said, he saved others, but he himself can't save. If he is the king of Yasharel, let him now come down from the cross and we will believe him. He trusted in Elohim, let him deliver him now if he will have him, for he said, I am the Ben Elohim. Now, I want to ask you a question. They watched him raise Eleazar from the dead. They watched him restore sight to a man who was born blind. They watched him heal a woman by the blood issue for 12 years. They watched him take away leprosy from people, one after another after another. What makes you think they would have believed it if they come down off the cross? They didn't believe a thing. They weren't going to believe, period. There was nothing that was going to change their mind. Now, he says, I am the Ben Elohim. Now, this is a very interesting concept, which I can't get into today because it's a little bit too lengthy. But suffice it to say, for him to say, I am the Ben Adam, the son of Adam. And it's very important, I think, to say Ben Adam and not son of man. Because we understand son of man. But Ben Adam is a particular statement. It heralds to a particular kind of DNA. You know, that this has just been recently discovered, right? There's two guys, Watson and Crick, 1953. They discovered the double helix DNA. And their studies went on and on and on. And when we got into the 1990s, they reported that, oh yeah, this one helix of the DNA has 72,000 genes descending, and the other side has 72,000 ascending, for a total of 144,000 genes. Now, you might remember the men that were saved in Revelation, their number was 144,000. Okay, now it gets more interesting. But suffice it to say that this genetic aspect of being Ben Adam is very specific to Mashiach. So he had 144,000 genes, 72,000 ascending, 72,000 descending, which is the very ladder that Jacob saw when he had his dream on the pillow. The very ladder, the double helix DNA seen by Yaakov in a dream. But to say he's Ben Elohim, another proposition altogether. And he says, it is given to you to become Ben Elohim. That's pretty significant. And when you see the difference between Ben Elohim and Ben Adam, it's extremely significant. The Ben Elohim are the ones that transgressed in Genesis 6:4. The Ben Elohim came under human women, right? The Ben Elohim are the ones in Job 1:6 and Job 2:1 who are able to stand before Yah in heaven with Hasatan with them. How is it that the Ben Elohim were able to go from earth into heaven? There's something about the Ben Elohim. It's given to us to be Ben Elohim. He said he was the Ben Elohim Thieves also who were crucified with him cast the same in his teeth. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness all over the land to the 9th hour, and about the 9th hour Yahusha cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is to say, Eli, Eli, why have you forsaken me? Now, here's a question. Do you think that Yahusha believed that Yahweh had forsaken him? That he cried out saying, why have you forsaken me? Now, a lot of people say, well, this just simply calls your attention to Psalm 22. I don't think so. I think he's talking to Joseph's father, whose name was Eli. Eli, Eli, why aren't you here? Yosef Arimathea is here. Miriam is here. Miriam Migdal is here. Why are you here? Some of those who stood there, when they heard this, said, he calls for Eliyahu. And then straightway one of them ran, took a sponge filled with vinegar, put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink. The rest said, let it be. Let us see whether Eliyahu will come and save him. Yahusha, when he heard, cried again with a loud voice and yielded up his breath. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in two from the top to the bottom, and the earth quaked and the rocks split apart. Now, the gospel, according to the Hebrews, says not only did the veil split in part, but the whole lintel holding the veil split and cascaded down. And what did they discover when that happened? What did they discover when that happened? The Holy of Holies, vacant, no Ark of the Covenant. As a consequence, no Levi required, no son of Aaron required to enter the Holy of Holies. You could pretend to be a Kohen Gadol. You could pretend to be a son of Aaron and still enter that Holy of Holies because there was no Ark of the Covenant there. What did they discover? That the whole of their ministry that had been taught to the people was a fraud. All right. And the graves were open, and many bodies of the Kodashim which slept arose. So the dead were walking again in Jerusalem. Who were they? Was Isaiah among them? Who were the dead? Zechariah? Who were the dead that walked among them? And came out of their graves with his resurrection and went into the sacred city and appeared to many. Now when the centurion who were with him watching Yahushua saw the earthquake and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, truly, this was the Ben Elohim. And many women, beholding afar off, who followed Yahushua from Galilee, were there ministering to him. Among them was Miriam of Migdal, and Miriam, the mother of Yaakov and Yosef, and the mother of Zabdi's children. And when the evening had come, there came a rich man named Yosef Arimathea, who was a Talmud of Yahushua. Not only a Talmud. Okay, so a lot of you are taught Joseph of Arimathea. There's no of there. Joseph Arimathea. Joseph, first in the divine line of kings. Arimathea. So his name alone tells you who he is. First in the divine line of kings, it's he who appears in the litany in Matthew 1. The father of Joseph, the father of Miriam, who is an exilarch king. A lot of people, you get into Matthew 1, you're like, okay, and Abraham begat Yitzchak. Okay, I've got energy. I can read this gospel. And Yitzchak begot Yaakov. And Yaakov begot Yehuda. And Yehuda begot Perez. And Perez begot... That's it. I can't do another begat. But when you look at that litany and you see those 14 generations coming up to David, then all of a sudden you hit David. And the next 14 names, king, 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 boom, 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 boom. Here they are, the 14 kings. Then you get another 14 after that. Who are those 14 after that? Well, Shealtiel, he was a big guy, well known. Zerubbabel talked about, building the temple. Then some of those other guys. Some of those other guys, they were all exilarch kings. They were all kings in exile. And so when you realize that Joseph was a king in exile, then it would be very common that he might be called the Arimathea, first in the divine line of exilarch kings, the father of Miriam, who makes her a princess in the straight line of David. Do you think they were just a couple of poor people hanging out in the tent up there in Nazareth? They owned a donkey, and then they had to kind of make their way down to Jerusalem and pay the tax, and it was real difficult because she was 9 months pregnant. And we didn't know. Joseph himself was in the divine line from David through Nathan. So these people weren't, you're talking about royal families, right? And Joseph of Arimathea, probably the richest guy in the world at that time. She wasn't broke. Okay. All right. And so what do we see here? Joseph of Arimathea, who was also a Talmid of Yahusha, and he went to Pilate and sought the body of Yahusha. Okay, he went to Pilate and said, hey, I want the body. So let's say something happens like this here in Lagos, right? Okay, we found a guy, we're not really sure it was him, but he got convicted, and so we're giving him the death penalty, and we're going to hang him this weekend. So they hang him. So some rich guy shows up and down and says, hey, I'm here. How about $50? I'll get the body. Nope. Not going to happen. You're not going to come in and drop $50 and get the body. You have to be the patriarch of the family to get the body. You can just not some strange rich guy comes in here and claims the body. You have to be related to the body. More proof that Arimathea was a direct relative. And he came in and said, okay, I sought the body of Yahushua. The Pilate commanded the body to be delivered him. And when Yosef had taken the body, he wrapped it in clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock, and rolled a great stone in front of the door of the sepulchre and departed. Now, again, this I think is imagery. Rolled a great stone in front of it. The problem, the sepulchre was dug out like a canoe, like a box dug out from stone, and you put a lid on it. That's how the sepulchres are in Israel today. And there was Miriam of Migdal and the other Miriam sitting alongside the sepulchre. Now, the next day, following the day of the preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisee came together to Pilate, saying, Sir, we remembered that the deceiver said while he was yet alive, within 3 days I will rise again. Command, therefore, that the sepulchre be made secure until the third day, lest his Talmudim come by night, steal him, and then say to the people, he's risen from the dead. So the last error shall be worse than the first. Pilate said to them, you've got to watch. Go your way and make certain as you can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone and setting a watch. Okay. Hey, is that my friend Joel? Hey, Joel. Good to see you, my friend. So I'm going to wrap up my discussion at this point because I wanted to kind of lay the foundation for the Pesach night. And we can kind of see that this whole preparation and everything that was laid out and put in place is something that is going to establish a line of prophecy that's going to be extremely significant, and something that gives us a chance to put our teeth into the message. Because what is the truth of it? Many times we've heard the gospel story over and over again. But the question is, okay, while you're here, we can sing something now that you guys have gotten there. Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. So, the whole point of this is that when you begin to look at the gospel, and I have to share this with you from a personal point of view. Having been through these scriptures now, I've read the Sefer, I think 22 times. And so I go through it, and every time I read it, it's like, that could be said better. And then, of course, there's the discovery. You find a name and you're thinking, well, that name looks kind of conspicuous. Wonder what it means. And when we begin to look at the Ivrit, all of a sudden we find something entirely new, like Bar Abba being the son of the father. And when you think about that, we want the son of the father, not the son of the father, not the one who claimed I am the son of the father. Like, let me give you an example of one thing I found in the Gospels that absolutely shocked me. Because I'd read it, I don't know how many times, never seen it before. But you have this argument going on between Mashiach and the scribes and the Pharisees. And he says to them, I only do what my father tells me to do. Well, we have a father too. Our father was Abraham. Well, your father may have been Abraham, but your real father is the devil. Then they say to him something. They say this very conspicuously to him. Our father was Abraham, and we have never been in bondage to any man. Now that's interesting because we're going to be doing the Pecach tonight. And in the Pecach tonight, there is going to be nothing but remembrance of being in bondage in Egypt. Nothing but remembrance of being in bondage in Egypt and the remembrance of Yah's deliverance from bondage in Egypt. Dainu. So when you see this deliverance from bondage. Who are they? Who are these people talking that said, we have never been in bondage to any man, but our father is Abraham? Well, we have some choices, but not very many. You have Abraham, you had Yitzchak. Well, Yitzchak hadn't been in bondage, but you can't really count it because he had sons. So then who were the sons of Yitzchak? Esau, Yaakov. Now, there could be other sons of Abraham. They could be Yishmaelim, which, by the way, is what I was called on the train coming down here. Mind-boggling, really. Never been called a Yishmaelim before. But at any rate, you could be the sons of Yishmael. That's one possibility. You could be of the 6 sons of Keturah. That's another 6 possibilities. Then the only other choice is sons of Esau. So they're telling him, we are not Yasharel, we are sons of Esau. That's what they're telling him in the gospel. So the information is there. Sometimes you just have to see it. A couple other things I found that are kind of interesting. Esau. That is such an English vulgar term. The name is pronounced Esau. And it is, Esau, because it is spelled Ayin Shin Vav. Actually, Ayin Sin Vav. The dots on the outside of the leg. Ayin Sin. So if you take that and you flip it like this, and we put the Yod Hey here, Yah, and then we have Vav Shin Ayin. We take those 3, flip it, Ayin Shin, Ayin Sin Vav. Esau is just the opposite of Yahusha. Just the opposite. Esau. Interesting things. So just these kinds of, a little bit of discovery here, a little bit of discovery there, and suddenly we find, another one. Well, he was the grandson of Aber. Now, here we are in the where? Iberian Peninsula, where the chief river is the Ebro. All comes from this word Aber, which is really not pronounced Aber, right? It's pronounced Hebrew. Well, if you wonder why Abraham got the name Hebrew, it comes from the name Hebrew, not Aber. Aber is a mistranslation. Hebrew is the true name, right? So it's little things like that. These are the little things that are found in the Sefer over and over and over again. And so hopefully the work we have done will be a blessing to the scripture readers, because it will take away the contradictions that you see in the script, because the script is so nonchalant about describing things that it ends up contradicting things. I'll get to the other contradiction later on this week. So this week we are going to be looking at a lot of the New Testament. And the reason being is because, in this walk where I have been, we started out in this walk, I think in 2008 maybe. And I have seen a lot of the leadership in this walk start walking away, and pretty soon they walk right into Judaism. And they deny Paul, and then they deny Mashiach, and they keep on going. And I can tell you, Be'ezrat Yahweh, that isn't going to happen with me. I am Mashiachim. And so for me, and this is one of the beauties of the Sefer, we printed 87 books, and it did not diminish from my faith in Mashiach at all, but built even more strength and more witnesses and more power and more truth. From the testimonies in the book of Enoch, to the testimonies in the book of 4 Ezra, to the testimonies in 2nd Baruch, to all of these testimonies that exist, for all the quotations that took place. You know, like for instance, I know for a fact that Luke was quoting the book of Jubilees when he mentioned the name Canaan in Luke 3 as part of the lineage of Joseph. Where did he get that name? And when you look at the miracle of that whole passage in Luke 3, where he goes from Mashiach all the way back to Adam, is that in Enoch, it says in chapter 10, that the demons will be in the earth for 70 generations. Okay, well, is a generation about 40 years, 70 years, 100 years, 120 years? Forget asking that question. Don't bother to ask that question. Just count the generations from Mashiach and go back 70. All the way down to 70, and the 70th one is who? Enoch. And what happens with Mashiach at his first miracle? He casts out the demon of the blind man, and the blind man is made well. And when he casts out the demon, what do the people in the synagogue say? This has not been seen in Yasharel before. Casting out of demons. That's because the demons hadn't been released yet, but they were released in the generation of Mashiach. How do we know that? Because Enoch tells us. And who verified it? Luke in chapter 3. How about the lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil? Where'd that come from? Show me in the OT. The verse came from Jubilees chapter 12. How about I've longed to gather you as a hen gathers her chicks under his wings? Where'd that come from? For Ezra. What about the passage that says at the transfiguration in the Gospel of Luke, this is my son, the elect one. Elegmenos is the Greek word that's ignored in most English texts. Where did they get the elect one? That would be the book of Hanok. Who quoted directly from the book of Hanok? Oh, that would be Jude. Who made direct reference to it? That would be Peter. 56 references in the New Testament. And yet I have people doing videos all the time. Enoch should never be read. And you should tear that out of your Bible. Okay, well, if you're going to tear that out, then get out the old penknife, cut out Jude. Well, we don't read Jude anyway. It always talks about, immorality. We don't like that topic. We don't like that, We don't like bringing up that subject because we got too many people that are immoral here, and we don't want to offend them by calling out their immorality. Yeah. So this is what you see, eh? So for me, when I see the prophecies of Mashiach in Enoch, I'm just jumping up and down. When I see the prophecy of the Mashiach in Ezra, and here's a couple of big ones. Okay, I'll just share with you just two more, and then we'll be done. One of the reasons I know that all of the English publishers of Bibles in the 20th century know that the Messiah had the exact same name as Joshua, the son of Nun, is because of Hebrews 4:8. Hebrews 4:8. Okay, we had it wrong. How do I know that? Because we had it wrong for 3 publications. That's how I know it. And I got into a big debate with a guy who's like, hey, you don't have that one right. I'm like, so we duked it out for several months, and he finally convinced me. I said, yeah, you are right. I went back and looked at the Greek. So the problem is that in the Greek, you see the name Jesus. Jesus. This is the name of the Mashiach, Jesus. But if you read the Septuagint, what do you find? What's the name of Joshua? What's Joshua's name? Jesus Naui. That's how the book is titled in Greek. Jesus Naui. The name appears 147 times in the Septuagint. Jesus. Talking about Joshua, the son of Nun. So I say, well, okay, Jesus there, Jesus here. Joshua there, should be Joshua here. Why isn't it Joshua here? Well, we can't make that change. All right, well, where does it matter? Where does it matter? Hebrews 4:8. Hebrews 4:8. For if Yahusha had rested on that day, he would not have given you another day. There remains, therefore, a Shabbat of rest for the believers in Mashiach. Now, all of the other English interpreters know that because they assign it to Joshua, not to Jesus, not to Yahusha. They assigned it to Joshua, including the Hallelujah Scriptures. And I found this interesting, the Hallelujah Scriptures, because they put in the Paleo-Hebrew for the name Yahusha, and they put in the Paleo-Hebrew for Yahweh. Okay, it's a take. It's an editorial choice. But then did you put in the Paleo-Hebrew where the name Yahusha appears in Zechariah 3? No, because that's talking about a different Yahusha. Did you put in the Paleo-Hebrew when you're talking about Hebrews 4:8? No, because that's talking about the different Yahusha. In fact, I think they used the word Yahushua. So what happens? You miss the whole prophecy of Zechariah 3. And I saw Yahusha, the high priest. Yeah. When was Joshua a high priest? He was never a high priest. He was a general. He wasn't a high priest. He was never a priest. When was Joshua the high priest? He was never the priest. Who's this Yahusha, the high priest they're talking about? Who's clothed in filthy rags. What are the filthy rags? It's the sins of the world. And at the end of the chapter, he's told, put on him a clean turban, put on him fine linen, and he will come to judge the living and the dead. Right? Because it is a prophecy of Yahusha. Who teaches that prophecy of Yahusha? No one, because they could never determine that that's who they were talking about. That, you see? So those translations make a big, big difference in terms of getting it right. And because when you get it wrong, the world is misled. Off the path we go. Okay? All right. So with that, I'm not going to give the blessing because we have a lot more blessing to do here tonight. So, and we'll do a lot of Hebrew in that passage. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up. So let me just say one last thing to you. Chag Sameach Pasach. Okay.
We're looking forward to tomorrow and the day before. Just explain, because people are asking, tomorrow you're doing the second Sabbath. What does that mean for people who don't understand that and the continuity of the scriptures that we're going into?
Doing the what? Doing the what?
The Sabbath, but it's a specific name that we have.
Oh, the second Sabbath.
The second Sabbath.
Yeah, this is the Deuteroproto Sabbath. That's how it's described, the Deuteroproto in the Greek, which is the second after the first. And so we're going to be talking about the first Sabbath of the year. It's not the first Sabbath of the year. It's the first Sabbath, the Mian Sabbaton, which begins the count towards Shavuot. So we will learn about this count and about what is proffered in that discussion of Mian Shabbaton. Not the first day of the week, an intentional mistranslation by English translators. Intentional. But rather the first Shabbat. By the way, when you find out what's in 6 Corinthians 16:2, you're going to discover that the tithe was only given once a year. Uh-oh. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephen. We're really looking forward to it. I know you guys have been sitting here and copy check. So thank you for that. And, you know, to see people from the Portuguese congregation here, welcome. The two Patricias, and maybe that's Melanie, is that right? Oh, I got guessed right. That's fantastic. Welcome, Joelle and the family here. So lovely that you're here, of Pastor Michael's. We're going to take a short intermission now before we just get ready for the Pesach meal. So, you know, come together and just talk while we move over into the next room. And we want to thank everyone joining us online. We will be back in about an hour and a half after the Pesach meal, where Stephen will take us through the retelling the story and the blessings. And you can join us then. So that's about 9:30 UK time, but please just look at YouTube for the notifications, and thank you. Florida, we miss you, but we're very much with you. Okay, let's have a break. Take care.
Because I'm waving at you. I'm like, yeah.